All right, we have 10 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order and we'll rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. At this moment, I'd like to just do a quick moment of silence for Diana Olson. She was an employee of the Sheriff's Office in Sandstone since 2012, and she died of some medical problems over the weekend. So we'll just take a few minutes here, or moments. All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up today, and we'll get going here. Public forum. We got some people on today. Looks like. So go ahead. Does anybody want to start?
Good morning. Denise Weiss, Royalton Township. I was at Public Forum in Sandstone last weekend, and I had asked to be put on the agenda because I wanted to talk about the bad water and the bad groundwater. Ms. Shorter called me on June 30th, asked me why and what I wanted to talk about. I again explained the groundwater having 23 parts per million at a nursery that is nearby that was in the possession of the county, and my private well being 24.8 parts per million for nitrate, having that be found out. So this is what we had ended the conversation on. She was going to talk to the people about being put on the agenda so that I could do a PowerPoint, and the reason was so that we could have a dialogue back and forth instead of me just specifically talking at the board, but have a dialogue back and forth. We did not hear back on this subject, so just figured it was pushed off. Looking at the agenda that I see coming up here this afternoon, it looks like you guys are specifically looking at an amendment for campaigning by speaking either for or against an issue by a candidate. Now, I did put my candidacy in for District 2, which is also our chairman's district. Now, when I want to talk about the well, that is me personally as a resident. That is not as a candidate. That is me as an individual. No different than I am also on the extension committee, and I have talked to this group before about things in web seminars that I have had with the extension. So now with this ordinance that you guys are going to be, or this amendment that you guys are looking at being on there, I can't talk about even the private things on our well. I can't talk about anything that we are experiencing as an individual. And that is wrong. That is free speech. That is squashing things. And is it just because that I am running that this now has to be brought up? Because Mr. Moore announced his candidacy with a photo from this particular room in the paper. I didn't complain about that. That was on March 19th. I haven't complained about any of that. Never would. That is everybody's individual right. But when I come up here to speak, this is about things that I am experiencing as an individual resident for Pine County. Now, into the campaign, you guys want to change the rules that I can't speak for the remainder until the election? This is censorship because of you're censoring a political opponent, even though what I'm speaking about is always as an individual resident. I want to think about that. For all of you guys that never before has this needed to come up, except for the fact that we have issues. Whether the nursery is here today or gone tomorrow, we're still going to have the bad water. This is a Pine County issue, not just an individual issue. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, John DeGray, Royalton Township. What I want to know is what are we gonna do with this cannabis? Who's gonna zone it? Because you say we have to zone it, but you won't let us use our zoning. We can't do an interim use permit. Now he's going for 3 permits for new buildings. So at what point do we require, how many buildings is he gonna put out there? 27 acres of it? Or 30 or what? He's got more land. So at what point is any zoning gonna happen here? He ain't following setbacks of our township. He ain't following any of the any of your rules. The little bit that you zone him, he's not following. Because you didn't, you had, your ordinance said he can't, all exhaust fans need to go up. Yet you come and make a rule that greenhouses are an exception, but nowhere in your zoning ordinance did it say greenhouses are exemptions until a couple of weeks ago, months ago. So, and then the outdoor lighting. So I get a letter from Aaron today that says, well, we gotta what constitute lights? I can show you a picture of the field before he turns his lights on. It's black. He turns his lights on, the field, I can see every plant that he has in the field. So what constitute lights? He turns his lights on bright, and plus now he's turning on red lights. We got red lights going on all night long. He's had these on all summer, on and off. So how many, who's gonna follow this? You say you go into a committee, the ones that put it. Now you got a committee member that actually took a donation from the cannabis factory that's on the zoning board. So where are we gonna prove this? He's taken a donation to his organization. So, and he's the one that's been writing all these zoning ordinances. So where are we gonna stop? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I didn't come here to speak today. My name's Les Orvis, Royalton Township. If he wasn't following the rules, Mr. Zappa, he'd be shut down. It's that simple. This bitching's been going on for over 2.5 years. Did I take $2,000 of Joe Zappa's money? I did not. Did my club? Absolutely. We're a 501c3 through the state of Minnesota. We give back, and that's what we do. I don't put any of this in my pocket. This senseless bitching's got to stop. How irritating these people come up with a different rule all the time on who. Mr. DeGray talks like he runs the township. He don't. Did I write a lot of them ordinances? Damn right I did. Did I help with the county? Damn right I did. Am I proud of it? I'm even more proud of that. Because that's a business just like no other business. I don't care. If you want to run cars, if you want to run car equipment, if you want to run alcohol, I don't care what it is. It's a business. In the county, it's set up that anybody can run a business. Take a look at the people behind this bitching and follow what they're doing. They're not up to code. I'll tell you straight up, I know the codes through Royalton and they're not following them. You start attacking, you want to glare at me, go ahead. I'm pretty proud of what I've done. So if we're not proud of what we're doing, we shouldn't be sitting here. It's a business like no other. If we want to get into name calling and just glaring at people, go home. That's enough. People grow up. Thank you.
I'd like to make a statement.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I never.
Hold up. Hold up. You already gave your time at public forum, so we're not debating here.
That's the point of order.
John, John.
You said you can't bring up stuff and he brought my name.
John,
I never said his name.
please, we had our time. So, is anybody else with public forum? Anybody online? All right. At this point, we'll move on to the agenda. Is there any additions or revisions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, you have a few additions, corrections, and some additional information. We have an addition consent agenda, adding item 4B. It's a consideration of approval of internal promotion of eligibility worker and STIT to senior eligibility worker effective July 13th. And then just a quick correction on regular agenda item number 9. In the PowerPoint presentation, there is some updated information on slides 18 and 19 reflecting a staffing change that should have been reflected originally on the slides. And then just additional information for consent agenda item number 3 is the actual award of the lowest bidder of that contract, and the amount of the contract.
All right. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll move the agenda with the additions and corrections. Oh, second.
Okay, any other discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same thing. Approve the minutes of the June 16, 2026 regular county board meeting and summary for publication. And the minutes of the June 30th, 2026 special meeting committee of the whole joint meeting with the zoning board.
Ludwig will move. I'll in a second.
All right, do we have any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same thing. Acknowledge the minutes of boards, committees, and correspondence, Pine County Land Surveyor Monthly Report, June 2026, and Pine County Board of Commissioners Board of Appeal and Equalization minutes, June 15, 2026.
I'll move that.
I'll second. Ludwig.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same thing. Approve the consent agenda with the revisions.
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I'll second.
Waldham?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Is there any other discussion on that? I'd just like to make a comment. It looks like our road projects are coming in still decent money, so what was it, 9 or 10% under our estimates, so that was good. They got a lot of work going on this year. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same thing. All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda and 2025 annual report, Midwest Medical Examiner's Office. Presentation by Dr. Aquin Piper. Hello.
Hey.
Good morning.
Oh, great. I was hoping that we could project, so I will try to just look up instead of down. But yeah, good morning. I'm Dr. Piper. I'm the Chief Medical Examiner with the Midwest Medical Examiner's Office. Can I click myself? Okay, great. So each year I present the summary and the statistics from the deaths that the medical examiner investigated for Pine County. So this will be for 2025. Our office does serve over 39 Minnesota counties, which is the most of any medical examiner's office. We actually added a county from Michigan last year, and we still serve some counties in Wisconsin. So for Pine County specifically, there were a total of 253 deaths in Pine County. Of those 253, 235 required to be reported to our office. Either they were unattended deaths, not occurring in a hospital or nursing home, or they were due to other than natural causes. Of those, we only had to assume jurisdiction or sign the death certificate for 38 of those deaths. And then those are the exam types that we did, whether we did an autopsy or merely did a medical record review. So in 2025, our office did not investigate any deaths that ended up being classified as homicide or undetermined. There were 17 deaths classified as accidental, 13 natural that we had to sign for, and then there were 8 suicide deaths. Of the accidents, only 2 were classified as due to drugs or substance abuse, which is a significant decrease, as we will see. There was 1 drowning, and I will say not necessarily in Pine County. We've had quite a few drownings already this year, so people, please wear your life jackets. And then there were 2 deaths due to fire. So over the past 5 years, you can kind of see little bumps here and there in the manners of death. The naturals and the suicides stay relatively the same. The accidents seem to fluctuate pretty greatly. So as you'll see, for the accident subclassifications, the drugs and substance abuse, you can see the peak in 2021, which everybody had because of COVID, and then a drop, and then back kind of up to normal, and then down to 2. So that's really good. Supposedly there was a pretty significant interruption in the fentanyl supply that had occurred. And then of course, also the use of Narcan would be decreasing those substance use deaths. And then of the substance use deaths or deaths associated with substance use, this is just the incidence in the cases we autopsied. So there was 1 incidence of fentanyl being present and 2 incidents of methamphetamine. The number in parentheses is the incidence throughout our whole jurisdiction. So we had 116 individuals come through our office, so to speak, who had fentanyl on board, and 201 with methamphetamine. So methamphetamine is a consistent, strong presence. Fentanyl seems to go up and down. But as you'll notice, we don't really see heroin very much anymore at all. And cocaine is kind of making a little bit of a comeback as well. I'm not sure of why that is. But a little kinder, gentler year in Pine County last year. So that's the end of my summary. If anyone has any questions for me? Sorry, this little thing.
Thank you. I'm happy to see the decrease in drug-related deaths. That's been a concern of ours for a long time. So hopefully that trend continues. How long on average does it take for a family to get a death certificate?
That's a good question. So for a death that occurs that doesn't have an autopsy or toxicology, usually it's 7 to 14 days. If toxicology is being performed, usually it's about a month. There are certain cases, if they require extended studies like neuropathology, it could take a few months. But most, it would be about 4 weeks. Yeah, our toxicology turnaround has gotten so much better. It used to be 6 to 8 weeks, and now it's about 4. So that's really good.
And if I could add one more. Who determines whether or not it's something you have to investigate? Is that a joint venture with the sheriff's office, or?
That's statute. So statute 390.11 lists the types of deaths that have to be reported to the medical examiner. And so that starts the investigation, and then whether we sign the death certificate or an autopsy is performed, that's decided by the medical examiner.
Okay.
But the reporting it, and so we investigate, that statute.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So how many times does like the treating physician have background data enough to say you don't have to?
They don't, so we tell them if it's, okay, we've investigated this death, someone died at home,
Mhm.
they have medical history, they're under your care as a clinician, you should sign. So we let them know. It's natural and they can sign. So we start the process and then we let them know.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yep.
How large is your staff if you've got that many counties?
There's 5 forensic pathologists. We have 10 in-office investigators. We also have secretarial staff and then our office manager, director. So it's kind of relatively small, but we're efficient.
Yeah, it must be. Good.
All right. Well, thank you again.
So much.
Thank
See
you.
next year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, annual St. Croix Education District Memorandum of Understanding, jail GED services. Rod.
Morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This is an annual agreement that we've had in the past with St. Croix River Valley Education District that supplies GED services for the inmates in the jail. When they presented for this year, we had it funded a couple of years, no cost to Pine County, but now the last year and this year now, we've come up with the funding because their funding went away. So we reviewed it. We actually reduced it down to some hours with a lower inmate count back there. And we were looking at 15,754 for the new agreement, and that's a 26 to 27 their school year as that goes through. What we did ask is to try and get some other information through the GED program, because our inmates are in for only a short amount of time. So to complete a complete GED education, it doesn't happen very often. So we have had 2 in the last year and a half that have graduated while we knew it here in the jail. So you think, well, 15,000 and we had 2 people. But what happens is the SCRED program, really by having it in the jail, we're planting that seed and we're getting people started. SCRED has come up with a new tracking program that we are going to have access to through SCRED. They'll report to us those that have started in our jail, those that are continuing in our jail at some point through the program, and then when they graduate, then we'll be able to see that, and we'll have some additional numbers in the future. So my recommendation would be is to continue on with this GED service so we can get some more information, because I think it is very important. We have that, without a lack of another term, captive audience to be able to start a program and plant that seed, I think is very beneficial in our community. So I would ask that we spend the 15,754 in funding to continue with the agreement, and that funding is paid through our fund balance forward. It's canteen funding, if you're familiar with that. We get dollars off of canteen sales and telecommunications sales and things like that, and that goes into a fund, and we're going to use that money to pay for it. So there's nothing to the budget for the board to decide on. It's just what we're going to do with the money that we have. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So typically, how many down there need the GED?
The need for the GED? Oh
Yeah.
boy, I don't have that number right off the top of my head.
A lot that's signed
And
up
it's,
for-
well, we don't go through and do an assessment saying, hey, you need a GED, so you should come down. It's really is a voluntary. And we put out notice to the inmates and say, hey, we've got GED services coming up. This is what they can do for you. Are you interested? And then they can come down and speak with the educator. A good question, this brings up a good question too. So when we're talking with the educator, we asked if they would go into the units and actually drum up business, if you would say, and kind of explain, because some people don't know what that is. What is the GED, or they're not interested. And we've seen a little bit of results in that there, where we get people interested and they come down. Again, our average stay is, anywhere from 10 to 13 days. So if we can get that seed planted and started, sometimes that's a benefit. So
Thank you.
I hope that kind of answered your question. I kind of went around it, but
I was trying to figure out the
Yeah.
need and how much they actually use it, because it's there too,
yeah, it's if you base it on our average daily population and how many are using it, it's a small amount. But what is the appropriate amount? And how many have an education already? How many want to continue on? Those that just don't. So
Yeah. Thank you.
So if they start the GED process down in the jail and get out, they can continue it.
absolutely. And they, the educator gets information from the individual, then they do follow-ups and they can, pursue that. It is their choice. If they decide they don't wish to continue on, then they don't. So
And them are the numbers you're hoping to get, because you can
Yeah.
only track if they completed it in the jail.
I'm only tracking what we do in the jail, but now with their tracking program, they're saying they can share all that information with us. So yet to come.
Okay. And then just a point on the funding from that canteen account is a strict account. You can't spend it just on regular budget stuff, I guess is what.
Correct. That is designated for inmates for just this purpose: education, recreation, other avenues where it's directly spent for them, for their needs. Not daily operational, but programming services.
Is there enough in the canteen
Yep.
fund to keep that going? So.
Yes, for a while.
My question. Mr.
Yeah.
Chair.
Sir.
And then, sorry, I'm sure you said this for the canteen fund again, then it's funded many different ways, or how does the money get into a canteen?
Two ways, from just profits on canteen sales, so inmates buy goods or, food mainly, things like that, and then the profit from that goes into the fund. And then that gets used. And then also from communications, there's texting devices, telephone calls, things like that, that cost. We get dollars from that, after the cost of the services that then go into this fund as well. And that fund was some years back, put into where it carries forward, and it's the fund balance. It keeps growing. And we haven't utilized it a lot. We do utilize it to offset some costs, but as long as it's for programming and for the inmates.
It's extra food, not the food that's provided.
Oh, correct. They can get snacks and things like that. There's a little bit of hygiene items in there. We provide hygiene, the basics, but they might want a special shampoo or something like that, or bar soap, or
And what's the current balance of that fund?
it's 300 plus, right?
Yeah, just over 300,000.
Yeah,
Over 300,000.
correct.
Thank you.
We've been growing that since
2019.
2019.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
And from what I remember is when the communication devices came on is when it really started growing, right? I mean, that.
Yeah, canteen always has been there growing, but yes, we did generate more revenue out of texting that took off a lot. And there's been some FCC rule changes and things in what we can collect, but our service provider, which is Reliance Phone Company, they take care of that, managing those dollars on what we can collect.
Okay,
Any other questions?
all right. So we need a motion on that.
I'll move that.
Okay. We got a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion on it? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same thing.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Rod. All right, Board Operating Guidelines Amendment. You can take it.
Sure, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I can take this. So there's a proposal to amend section 4, paragraph H of the Pine County Board Operating Procedures that were adopted February 3rd, 2026. You have some proposed language there that just clarifies candidates for a Pine County office and using the public forum to campaign. That doesn't, it seems like something that should be addressed and something that we didn't think of when we originally adopted the board operating guidelines. I did have Reese review this language and he felt he supported the language and didn't feel that he was limiting free speech or anything like that, especially given that public forum is not even a requirement to have.
Yeah, and I think the key is we just didn't want public forum to be a campaigning forum, that is the biggest thing. Where technically it's not even allowed, right, at certain times.
Right, at certain times you can't campaign in this building because it's a polling place.
Yeah. So it doesn't eliminate any person's right to use the time or anything like that, but it just is for not campaigning. So
They can still speak to issues.
Yeah. Yep.
Still can speak of grievances.
Yep.
It's just for non-campaigning.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, right. That was my
That
understanding.
was my understanding.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So who wanted this?
There had just been concerns that had been raised.
So is there somebody's name attached to this that wanted to change this?
I don't have any specific name attached to this, no.
Okay. So does it follow what's already in place for like state election law?
Well, state election law would cover while this building is a polling place, for example, no campaigning can happen in this building if it's on the ballot. So for example, right now, it's early voting or absentee voting for the primary election. And the District 1 race is on that ballot. And so state campaign laws would cover the District 1 race right now can't happen in this building, but it wouldn't cover, the District 2 or the county attorney or the sheriff That wouldn't start until the early voting period for that starts in September.
You got a question?
Did you have any other questions, Commissioner Waldon?
Well, no, other than, I guess I don't know who wanted it, other than it just appeared on this. It did come from a specific.
Well, one thing I think is the board operating guidelines is something that we've never had until we have a commissioner that tends to push everything. And that's why we had to come up with the board operating guidelines. Most civilized people understand that there's just things you do and not do. So it seemed like public forum was starting to turn into a campaigning type deal. And we just wanted to kind of look at that and see, hey, instead of telling people, hey, during this time, you can't campaign, public forum is not that platform to campaign. And that's where it arrived at, so.
Yeah, it's to bring things to our attention that need to be addressed,
Mhm.
I think, or at some
And,
point.
and I think the real key thing is a lot of county boards don't even allow public forum. We have never decided we want to do that, nor do I even think that's a issue, but, we have had a lot of stuff come through the public forum over the last year that was just, I don't think it's the right spot for it myself. Yeah.
Mrs. Chair?
Yeah.
A couple thoughts in my head. I think as we look around our society, it's like, well, why do we need this? You start looking at what's happening in other parts of the country, elections, even in our own state, the rhetoric is just ramping up. And part of that's because social media, everybody can, is looking for whatever their moment. But you just see that upswing happening. And I don't think that most people are look forward to that. They tend to click on it, but really, do we really want that? I don't know that it serves the public interest. We just see that ramp up happening. And here we are, we haven't even got through the primary election, and we've got ramp up for general election starting already. It just happens sooner and sooner and sooner. And it's like, and part of it is, we're moving towards a little bit more of a contentious society, so we have to kind of, it's maybe something that we haven't had to deal with before, but part of it is being proactive when we see that happening around us. I personally, it's not like there's this great glaring problem that, I see here in Pine County at the moment, but that means we be proactive about that. I don't want that. I don't want us to be on the news like some other counties are already. And part of this, I think, is an attempt to avoid that. I think the question about the timing, well, it's like, when is the ideal time? I don't think 3 months ago we saw this as being but an issue, but you see that because some of those other laws kick into place, but now it's happening sooner and sooner and sooner. But the other thing is that the timing, I see this from a positive standpoint too, because in the past, I don't know that we've had candidates that have come and introduced themselves and said, hey, I'm running for office. And I like that. I think that's a great thing. And we ought to, we ought to have allowance for that sort of thing. But, there's a point where you can only go so far, and you move into the realm of campaigning because, we're now public and visible. So on one hand, I do invite this, but, to a certain point. And I think you've answered the questions. If our county attorney was here, I was going to ask him, does this preclude somebody that's on the board from asking, from talking about, if whatever the issues are that we are dealing with that day, does that say that they can't participate in that discussion? And then the other question would be, does this preclude a candidate from even participating at all in public forum? And I think the answer to both those questions is no, but I would, and you guys have kind of stated that already, understanding I would like to have heard from our county attorney on that, but I think the answer still would have been no. It does not preclude, it is not an absolute, you can't participate either on one side or the other. That's not the purpose for this. But it's to put some guardrails up so that we don't find ourselves in a position where we have to,
Yeah.
do something.
I agree with that. And that's the way I feel about it too. We're not gonna stop someone from having public comment. But it gives the chair or whichever chair at the time sees if somebody starts to turn it into something, he can stop it.
Mhm.
So I think that's good.
Yeah, and I think the key is, like Roger said, it kind of invites candidates to come and give a one-time, this is me, this is what I'm running for, and whatever. So,
Some have chosen to make use of it, some haven't, and that's their prerogative.
Yeah.
But we've not had that before per se either, so.
if that came within the time frame of, just like if District 1, if someone wanted to announce their candidacy now, can they still hear?
In my mind, they'd have to do it in Sandstone
Okay.
because that's not a place.
Okay. Sounds good. And from when I ran the first time, 12 years ago, there was communication from the administrator to the candidates, and that was kind of something you could put out to them or whatever.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I originally had sent the board operating procedures out to each candidate, but I definitely can follow up as well.
Okay. Cause I think to your point, that is good stuff. Anybody else? Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed, say no.
I oppose.
All right. Data center moratorium. This is you too.
I can take it briefly. Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Previously at April 7th, we had considered a moratorium on data centers in Pine County to proactively address and allow our zoning board to have time to study data centers and all of the considerations that go into them. At that time, the proposed interim ordinance for the moratorium died due to an absence of a second to the motion to adopt it. However, of course, on June 30th, we had an informational session, but with the zoning board and the county board on data centers, and there was a lot of discussion that happened after that. And so I'm placing this back on the agenda for your consideration as recommended by the zoning board.
All right, so what are your guys' thoughts on this? I just think a lot of different information has come up. We did receive a letter from Pokegama Lake zoning or Pokegama Township, and they would support, their zoning officials said he supports a moratorium to try to get it figured out. I know beginning when we started that, moratoriums weren't real excited about, but I think it kind of gets back to even Roger, like you said, being preventative, not dealing with it. My question is if you put a moratorium on and a project comes to us and fits what we're looking at, we can lift that moratorium or whatever, or it's on a as it comes basis, or?
Well, typically projects wouldn't even be sent to you during a moratorium, would be my thought. But as the board, you do have the authority to lift the moratorium at any point.
as of if we get an ordinance out there before the year, we
Right.
can lift it.
Yep.
Okay.
With, Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
With that in mind, a couple things. First, the purpose of a moratorium, people view it different ways. Some would view it as, well, this is an opportunity to delay something up to X months or years or whatever, and as just a delay tactic. Others view it as this is an opportunity to take pause and study whatever the issue is and come up with realistic guidelines to deal with it. And I think that's that would be my view of how we ought to approach this moratorium. You know, is let's use, if we go with a moratorium, we use it to to indeed task those whoever is in charge of doing that to come up with some reasonable framework of how to deal with data centers in Pine County. Time wise, you know, we talked a little bit about this at our last meeting. I'm inclined to think, let's do a 6-month moratorium. I don't know, we have to do a full year. Let's do a 6-month. That will give us time. And if we find at the end or getting close to the end of the 6 months that we're not quite ready, maybe we can extend it. But to go a full year at this point, may be playing towards we're just trying to delay something, and I don't want to give that appearance because I think if it is as serious as it is, then we need to deal with it sooner than later. So that's just my thoughts,
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I'm as I stated previously, I'm not a moratorium fan. However, I subscribe to the theory that Roger just proposed, is that we use this opportunity to go double time on getting some reasonable expectations put forth for a data center. And my thoughts happen to be exactly as Roger's is. Are we gonna find out something in a year that we can't find out in 6 months? If we task that zoning board, I know those people, they'll meet twice a week if they have to get something done. They're smart people. I would be more inclined to maybe change my mind if we could do a 6-month moratorium.
Anybody else got thoughts? Yeah, go ahead.
I'd also think rather than just tasking just the zoning board, that I think there was a suggestion of this working group, which would be a mix of the zoning board and some other that administration sees would be beneficial to work on this project because this may involve needing to get more perspectives and more expertise than just one group. So yeah, and I would let administration figure that out.
I'll go ahead.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I have a question. So we have one, because the question was brought up, I believe it was somebody at the last meeting, right, that asked if local government units could have their own moratoriums. So you said there's one that supports it, Pokegama. Do they have their moratorium in place then at the township level for?
Right, so right now I do not know of any local jurisdiction in Pine County that has one. And the proposed moratorium would cover all townships in Pine County, and then it would cover the cities that have opted into county zoning. So it would just be a blanket cover. So each individual township would then not need to adopt it because they'd be covered under the Pine County moratorium.
Okay, so there could be if there's a city that didn't adopt, then they won't be affected by a moratorium then?
Correct, they would need to do it
Separate government.
themselves.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I was just gonna say, I think that 6 month thing is fine with me too. And you know my position on this. I think the pause is exactly like you say, we need just to educate ourselves as much as we can before we just green light something like that, so.
Is it something, if we did a 6 month, can we extend it?
Correct, yeah,
Okay. All right. Just like if you did a year, can you extend it?
right, there is a little bit of a provision to extend.
Okay. Okay. And yeah, I think the direction of the zoning board was they were gonna get a working group and,
They wanted a 1 year.
yeah.
And that's was my second thought was, is that enough, is 6 month enough time for them to meet with that, they all have, jobs and whatever, they meet at night or whatever. So that's my only question on the 6 month thing.
But if we did need to extend it, we can still extend it.
Exactly. We could. And then we have a zoning board member here and I go to that meeting anyway, so I could say that, if you get it done in 6 months, we're good to go. And if you don't, we'll extend it another 6. I just want to know, how do you want to amend that motion? What do you want to do there?
Well, I don't think we have to amend the motion.
Oh.
We don't have a motion yet.
No, but we want to make a motion.
If we make a motion for 6 months, it's our motion, we can at some point in November know that we need to. We're gonna need more time, and we'll have to decide that.
We have a sample.
Yeah, within the packet, there is a sample ordinance, and so section 7 would need to just be updated rather than saying in effect for 12 months. It would be, I've crossed it out already and put 6 months. And so I would get Deb the updated copy for signing, if that is what the motion is.
Yeah, the ordinance is 2026-15.
In section 7 is where the length of time is listed.
Do we have anything here as far as who would be the idea of a working group, or who would be putting this together? Does that need to be spelled out in here as well?
I
Or
don't
could
know,
be-
right,
Or is that just assumed?
right, so in section 5, it directs the zoning board to conduct a study of the data center regulations. And so I think to me that gives the zoning board the decision on how they want to do that, which it does sound like they will likely want a work group. But it gives the zoning board the provision to decide how they're going to do that.
Can I add the words and administration, county administration, zoning board? 'Cause I'd really like you involved in that besides just our zoning board or zoning administrator.
Sure.
Okay.
I didn't hear everything you said.
I said I would like our county administrator involved with this as well as just and not just our zoning board and zoning administrator.
Sometimes I don't hear either.
I'll use the mic next time.
There you
Was that making a motion or?
I'll make that a motion
Okay.
with the 6 month date as well.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same thing. All right. Courthouse front door security screening. Rod. Get that far ahead.
Here I am again.
Okay.
So I was asked by Kelly, and we put it on the agenda just to discuss a little bit about the pilot program as we started with the security up front. So as I get going, I'll just go through a little history. Over the past year and a half, the sheriff's office, worked towards improving court security, and we were awarded a match grant. we worked with Amy on getting that there. And what we did is we established a uniform presence up front at the main public entrance, and then we purchased some mobile screening equipment that's capable of being deployed anywhere our need is. Well, on June 8th, we experienced a security threat that demonstrated that value in having a prepared security plan. And because equipment and staffing were already in place, security screening operations were quickly mobilized, and we were able to put that at single point entry at the public entrance. Full screening operations were established and with limited disruptions to the courthouse operations, and security staff began collecting some operational data while maintaining our elevated level of security. And then rather than discontinuing security operations, following the event, the Sheriff's Office, along with county administration, chose to continue our single point entry as a pilot program to better evaluate, whether a permanent single point entry screening is like practical and beneficial. So purpose of the pilot program as we're moving forward is we're looking at like operational effectiveness through the courtrooms upstairs when we provide bailiff and courtroom security, and then courthouse security when we had our guys stationed downstairs. And we're looking at staffing requirements and how we staff that, traffic flows of people coming in and out, customer service impacts, how did it impact people coming to the courthouse, security effectiveness. We looked at budget impacts, obviously, equipment performance. How well is our equipment performing? It is already 5 years old. The stuff is getting up there anyway, but it's still working really fine. Then we're looking at like operational improvements that we've already made. So since we had the event and since we put our single point entry in, we already made some changes. And during the first few weeks, we identified and modified our layout. You saw where the desk was, and we moved the desk around. What that did is it improved our traffic flow. We were able to reduce some staffing requirements to run things instead of having people. We became more efficient in that. We improved our coordination between the bailiff operations and the public entrance screening, and we enhanced opening and closing procedures too for our security officers. These improvements have already reduced our initial projected operating cost increase. So prior to this event, we had what would it cost? And we put together a preliminary, and we're already seeing that was a little on the high side, and we were able to reduce some of that. Security staff have developed procedures to collect some operational data. I think that got put in your packet. Very simple is all it is. We just, what are we doing? And then there's some tracking on the back. We're just tracking, numbers that are coming through. We're looking at around 150 to 200 people come through. Very small snapshot. We need to gather more data on what that looks like. We look at daily equipment inspections. We're collecting information, security checkpoint inspections, weapons and contraband that's been turned away. In a 4-day period, we turned away 36 different knives that came through the facility. Or that were attempting to come through the facility. Daily building walkthroughs, we average 4 a day, and we document that all on this form that's there. Opening and closing security inspections are documented there. Daily security briefings and any pass-ons when we have like information that's coming through. We have a formalized way we're passing that information on to whoever the next officers that are there. So we've increased in that area. But there are things that we're still evaluating. Employee screening is going to be one issue that we will bring up. I don't have a recommendation at this point, but things like, do we screen all staff coming through? I know that there's been some talk and some suggestions. Do we allow people to have like a credentialing procedure? Do we have a credentialing procedure? Do we allow an employee bypass? And there is talk of where we're talking about maybe a tiered level of security. Today may be a normal day where we might have something increased for some reason where we have to increase the security, and we can do things like that. Yet to be determined, but that to me makes more sense that we have a kind of a tiered security level system. additional procedures and things that we're looking at. We're looking at what do we do with oversized bags and oversized backpacks? They don't fit through the screener. Right now, currently, we look at everything. You open it up. If they don't want to have us look at it, they certainly can bring it back out to their car. Mail packages that are being delivered, vendors that are coming through, contractors, things like that. What do we do with that? These are questions that we'll be asking and presenting to the board, like, hey, this is what our suggestion is. I know there's facilities that utilize for like mail and vendors and things like that coming through their delivery area, but and we have an area, but it's just not manned right now. So we'll work through those. Also hours of operation and scheduling for the single point entry, opening and closing procedures if there's any changes there, emergency lockdowns and what we do, and then working coordinating with courthouse staff. And that'll be more of the sheriff's office taking that on what we do as an entire building and what we do in emergency situations. So current budget position, prior to June 8th, we were asked to just kind of like, hey, what would it cost to go single point for unarmed security up front? We just basically put an individual in there and utilized what were upstairs, and we figured it was right around $53,000 for just simple, quick math. Since we've put this together and we started working at it, working it and moving things around, we're looking at more of a $30,000 to $35,000 increase to courthouse security budget. Currently, we're about 15,000 underspent for 2026, and if that trend carries forward, that easy math would cover that for the remainder of the year, and then we would have better information and be able to look at what does 27 look like for a continuation. Public response, we've had an overall, our public response to security up front has been positive. Common observations where visitors appreciate the added security. Screening really has been orderly and efficient. Very minimal complaints have come through. Staff really strive to make the process welcoming rather than intrusive. And they also hand out little stickers, the little sheriff's office stickers to the little kids, and that's been a hit. Employees' response, everything that we're hearing, when we hear that, we're hearing it down here, that they feel much safer. Employees appreciate the visible security presence. And we even had one employee that chose to work temporarily from this location due to a security issue at another location. And so that goes to show we have that, and staff they'll utilize that when they need to. Overall, response, security staff, they become really ambassadors to Pine County and the sheriff's office. They're greeting visitors, providing directions, assisting courthouse staff. They answer a lot of questions downstairs and direction. I got to think, what's the first office down here?
Treasurer.
Yeah, it's probably eliminated everyone walking through going, where do I go? And they go in there, they ask our guys. And their presence has also both enhanced our safety and our customer service here. We're looking at equipment evaluation. The pilot program also allows us to evaluate our equipment reliability, our preventative maintenance, consumable costs, things like that, repairs, equipment replacement, or equipment placement, and long-term replacement planning. Metal detector back in 2020, it cost us $6,000, and that was including some portable handhelds. And that X-ray bag scanner in 2020 was $22,000. I got to imagine things like that are more expensive, but we have a maintenance program and things are working very well down there right now. And I expect that to continue for some years and to move on. So the sheriff's office recommendation, we continue on with this pilot program to the end of the year, or at least through the end of September, to gather more additional information. And then also with that, I recommend our public access to the building hours would change. Currently, we open at 6:45 in the morning, and we close at 16:30 or 4:30 afternoon. And we would recommend that we change to 07:30 in the morning and continue to close at 16:30. Security staff operations then would be staffed from 7 to 17, half hour before, half hour after, to do the sweeps and things like that. Pilot program's already demonstrated measurable improvements in courthouse safety, customer service, and operational efficiencies, while additional procedural improvements will remain. The experience gained over the coming months will provide the board with an objective data needed to make an informed long-term decision. And so I recommend, or I would ask for board action to continue single point entry pilot program through the end of the year, or at minimum, the end of September. To continue, the budget impact would be zero. We should be able to encompass that in the current budget for 2026. And then consider changing the hours of the courthouse open hours to the public from 06:45 to 07:30 in the morning, and continue on. And, you know, also not including holidays and things like that. Any questions? It was kind of a lot in a short amount of time.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So you're changing what, explain the changing hours again? What hours
Well,
are you changing?
I'm asking for the asking to change the hours of opening those front doors from 06:45 to 07:30. And that would be for public. Staff can still come in wherever. I mean, there's staff entrances that are all key carded, and they'll still be able to walk through. What that does is it reduces the hours that we would need for the security staff up front.
Is part of the reason because the public doesn't show up till at least 7:30?
Our big push is 8 o'clock when staff come in.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a little bit here and there, but public is not coming in that early. You know, there's no services open
Right.
at that time of day, so.
And,
Uh,
well, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
In rural Minnesota, about 100% of the people I know carry a pocket knife or a Leatherman, and it's part of their uniform.
Yep.
And I don't know if it's possible to have a box that you could put your stuff in and then
That is
retrieve it when you.
absolutely something we are looking at. The thing is we don't want to have something that we're responsible for as the county, that we're holding on to this in case something happens. But there is talks of a box that's open. If you want, you can put it here. Most people, they just take it right back out to the car. We've had people leave stuff on the ledge out here. I don't recommend that. But so then if we had a box, put it in and you pick it up on the way out. Then we'll have to have a process in play. What do we do with those that are forgotten? And
Yeah.
so just things we'd have to manage through. Not that we can't. Mr. Waldham, I believe you had a question. Yes?
Yeah, so it's a pilot project, so the power goes out or the machine breaks. Do you just do a lockdown then? Nobody's allowed to come in if now this machine breaks?
I would, you know, just
What's your plan B?
not thinking through that part yet, I would recommend we would still be open because we still do hand screenings. You know, we have metal detector wands that are battery operated and charged, and we have 3 of them. And we can do metal detector there. We would not be able to use the X-ray bag scanner, but when we don't use the X-ray bag scanner, we physically look. We open bags. So I would say we do not close. You know, but then you got power outage, or maybe there's other reasons why we should be looking at a different method or a different being open. Any other questions?
Okay, so we are looking for a motion on what you guys think about continuing this. We had a meeting here last week, and I asked everybody at the extension committee what they thought of it. Everybody was very positive. So I've asked a couple other people, and most people are very positive about it and understand it, so.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
we do have Amy from the courts here, and I think she would have just a brief thing.
Yeah.
If you would have a moment.
I plan for sure. I hope you guys can hear us all, but the bench, all 3 judges do.
Okay, I talk pretty loud, but I'll talk louder here. So I work up in court administration. I am the court administrator, and we had a security meeting debrief afterwards of the incident, kind of to improve how it rolls out when we had the incident on June 8th. But then afterwards, we did discuss the single point entry, and the bench, all three judges fully support that. We are one of the last courthouses in Minnesota to not have single point of entry. So not that we're able to help fund that, but it's very much appreciated. We do also see more heated, the public come in more upset. So it's very nice for our staff too to have that. So I just wanted to express our support as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. I got one piece to add. I know, Amy, we've been talking about, there's another grant coming up, correct? Is that still in the works?
Be able to help with staffing, but
Right.
about your equipment that's 5 years older, I know Rod's already working on a wish list that we will be applying for that grant when it passes.
So should we continue on in this, and single point entry is a thing for Pine County now, then there's grant funding that we would apply for to make that more of a permanent situation.
I got a question. Yeah. I see people walking in and out right down here, so
Correct.
that's exempt from,
Correct. That is an employee only entrance.
Oh, you-
It's a card.
okay, you say single point.
So when I talk
One
about
point of
single point entry, for public, so we have a
Oh.
public single point entry for security measures.
Okay.
And what we're doing is we're screening public. Now, we are currently screening everyone coming through until we get different direction from either sheriff or administration that we'll start looking at what we're gonna do with staff coming through. And they can come through down here anytime. They can use their card as well as the south entrance down there in the stairwell.
Yeah.
They can use their card and enter anytime there.
And then there's a loading dock there, correct?
Correct.
So any deliveries, how?
Well, currently deliveries are kind of really all over. We get quite a few of the large truck deliveries down here. UPS will deliver down here when they're delivering to the sheriff's office. But I know a lot of the other they'll get UPS up here, mail will come through here and hit the mail room, things like that. Those are things we got to work out. What are we doing with them? Are we gonna allow them to bypass? Do we screen? What do we do? And we'll probably talk to Reese too, as far as what we can do. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, yeah, we are looking for some to continue this or not. So I don't know what you guys feel like, or if someone wants to make a motion.
Do we need a motion to continue to the?
I'll move it. And the time change also.
Okay.
Up to September. Are we gonna go with the September?
In September?
Or do you wanna go with?
So the request is to the end of the year or at minimum through September. So we get,
I'll go to the end of the year and the time change.
I'll second that.
Okay, and then periodically, you'll just kind of give us some updates.
absolutely. I'll probably take my direction from Kelly. If she says, hey, the board wants to, see where we're at, we can certainly give a synopsis and we'll have more information because as we're collecting this daily, these stats and things coming through and any incidents, things like that coming through, we'll certainly share those to see how it's working.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, you got this.
One more question, which is adding to this. So does the time change, if you change it on the beginning, is it then shortened on the end or is
No.
it now it's overtime? Or
No,
how does that work?
our hours right now, we're coming in at 6 o'clock.
Gotcha.
Instead of 6:45 or like 6:15, they're ready to go. So what we would be doing is changing the hours down here for our staff to come in at 7. So it saves some time. We'll still be open till 16:30 or 4:30 PM, the county building would be. So we're just shortening it up we're coming in a little later. 7:30 open, so our staff is in at 7, half hour before, and then our staff is a half an hour after. And they're doing their sweeps and clean, shutting down equipment and writing reports and things like that.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, any other discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
All right.
Opposed, same thing. All right, commissioner updates, AMC District 1 meeting. Looks like Holland and Nelson were there.
Well,
Well, maybe I got two things just to put on that. We did during our morning time, AMC staff did talk a lot about, legislative, update, you know, what passed, what didn't, and the, impacts on counties. And some of those things are still in the HHS arena. And, that's gonna be some negative budget impacts on us, both from the federal and the state, and I'm sure we'll get into that. The other thing that maybe I would just point out was we did have, you know, we got this upcoming jail discussion coming, and the fact that AMC was was highly interested in participating with us and helping, I thought that was great. So that was a positive outcome of that as well.
Well, I'll just pile on a little bit. One positive I take away is, there is some money for modernization of the other system that is in need of modernization that HHS uses. And if you remember, that started really grassroots right here in Pine County. And so it took a long time. Things take a long time. Do you remember how many years, 5 years, maybe, ago, we had we had AMC staff and we had HHS staff and we had some legislators come and look at what our people were given to work with. And they were astounded, some of the actually HHS staff, that people would have to work with such a system. But even though everybody recognized the need and recognized that we needed to, the state needed to invest a lot of money, it still took 5 years for them to get to the point where they've authorized now, and it's not going to be something, it's a huge system. It's not going to be something that we're going to be able to use by Christmas time for sure. I don't know when they roll it out, a year and a half from now, maybe, but anyway, that was good. It's always good to hear from colleagues and what they're doing. Pine County's, I think, doing all right, and I think we're all looking forward to what other counties in the area might think about what we can do with our jail.
All right. Highway 23 Coalition.
Didn't attend because it was the exact same time as AMC.
Sounds good. Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails.
They didn't meet.
Snake River Watershed Plan Partnership, I did miss. I had to attend a kids event. Lakes and Pines.
They did not meet them.
Okay. East Central Regional Develop Commission.
Well, they did meet, but I got they sent the notification by snail mail, regular old letter. And I got the letter on Tuesday and they met on that Monday night prior to the Tuesday at a different location in a different time. So I missed it. That's my fault.
All right. NLX was canceled. Shack.
I was unable to attend.
Okay. Extension Committee, I did go. We talked about the budget that's gonna be coming to us today. They talked about the fair. A lot of that's all geared towards the fair. And the president of the University of Minnesota is coming to the Pine County Fair. Do you remember what day? Or
Thursday.
Thursday? Okay, yeah, so I guess she's gonna be making her rounds. They're gonna go to the Pine City Community Garden and a few other things, so, yeah, it should be interesting. So, they're very excited about it, so. Zoning Board?
Yep, we got a meeting. Main topics were the Willow River zoning thing, and I think you've had that presented too in the other meetings. They had a lot of discussion about that, because like what happens with permits that were allowed before, and now, you know, with the new, if we take over the zoning, we might not agree with it, would become non-conforming. But that's a lively group of people on that zoning board, and I'm glad, they do a good job. Then there was a floodplain ordinance update. The last two things were ordinance amendments. The DNR was requesting a change on elevated things in the floodplain because things the way they line out from just to a conditional use permit, generally speaking. And then SSTS ordinance amendment in the large scale campgrounds like Pathfinder Village and there's such small spaces. And everybody wants their own holding tank, whatever, but so that they can't meet setback requirements. So they're gonna work through something there and whatever they come up with, that will come back to us and we'll see what happens there, so. That's pretty much it.
Okay,
Oh, I should let you know, there's 1,290 campsites in Pathfinder,
1290?
1,290.
How many does the one at the end of the?
And they're really small.
And they're privately owned. Each lot.
Circle.
Each lot is private.
Yeah.
okay. Any other meetings that anybody attended they want to report on?
I did meet with the director of the Solid Waste Commission, and we had a wonderful chat about some things that have been hard for us to deal with our recycling centers. And one is brush, and the other is probably the glass and cardboard. And he's got a plan. I think that he's gonna talk with Aaron and Kelly and I about that. I think will be very beneficial to us.
Good. Okay, is there anything other to come before the county board?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay.
Were we gonna discuss electronic money transfers? Any money will be discussed? Was that gonna be discussed at this meeting, or can it be?
Well, we weren't going to add it to this meeting because we don't know. You know, investigations have just started happening and there is no action that the board needs to take at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, take a look at your upcoming meetings and, looks like a lot of them coming up. And we'll just recess for,
Oh, do you want to take just a few minute
Yep.
recess?
yeah,
Okay.
I think we'll just take a 5-minute break. Go to the bathroom and then come back and, we'll start our budget.
Yeah, and then there'll be about 45 minutes and then we'll break for lunch.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll just take a few minutes quick. No.
Go to the bathroom, but it's
reconvene and start with the 2027 budget. And Kelly is gonna start with the budget overview.
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the board, Kelly Schroeder, County Administrator. And as has been done in the past, we're just going to do a quick brief overview of the entire county budget before we kick off into those individual meetings. And the whole idea of this is just to know, give you an idea where we're starting. So as you're meeting with those individual departments, you have an idea of which questions to hopefully ask, and really where we're at, so that you don't go into those meetings blind of not knowing if things are looking good or not so good and whatnot. And so I noted in my budget request, which I will highlight here in a minute, is that the 2026 budget was adopted using a little over $1.1 million of one-time funding and reserves. So in reality, we were starting the 2027 budget $1.1 million behind, because those are one-time dollars. You can't continue to reuse them. So this budget process is going to look a little bit different than in the past. Obviously, today we're kicking off with this individual budget overview, and then the outside entities will be presenting. And then again, at the regular meeting, July 21st, we have a few department presentations. Our only special budget meeting, which is our individual special budget meeting, which is scheduled, is for July 28th, which is a full day of again, department presentations. Moving into August, the next regular board meeting, there's a few budget presentations as well on that agenda. And then really after that, it is meetings as needed, as necessary. You do, once you move into September, have a hard deadline of by September 30th, you need to adopt a preliminary levy. But typically we do that at that second meeting in September, but if more time is needed, you do have till that September 30th deadline to get that done. In October and November, again, in the past, sometimes we've had budget meetings, sometimes we haven't needed them. Departments continue to work very diligently on their budgets during that time frame, because again, we have a better idea of a levy target of what dollars are going to be available. And then December, we have the Truth and Taxation meeting in early December, and then that final budget and levy is usually adopted at the second meeting in December. So just to give you an idea of where we're at, what's coming at you. I always like to remind you that the budget does not equal levy. So this shows all of our different funds that we have budgets for in Pine County, and there are a lot of our budget of what we're spending is not paid for by levy. And so this shows you that stark contrast of, in the general fund, we spend in 2026, we had a $24.7 million budget, but 14 million of it is paid by levy. The rest of it is paid by fees, charges, state aids, grants, donations, interest, those types of things. So that's an important thing as we're talking about the budget to remember is budget doesn't equal levy. There is a lot of other revenue that works into the conversation as well. Again, the budget format. So you'll see departments present to their budget to you in different ways. It's important to remember that first we have the big funds that we budget in, and then it breaks it down to within the department. And then within that department, there's budgets for all of these different line items. And so I just have an example on the slide for you of, salaries and telephone and conference registration. So each of those budgets has a number attached to it. So in different departments, we'll present that to you differently. Some will use an Excel spreadsheet, some will have PowerPoint presentations. But just know in the background, there is all of these line items that have numbers attached to them. So budget assumptions. So a budget is really just an estimate. It is an estimate of revenues and an estimate of expenses. And so if we all had a crystal ball, it would make budgeting really easy. But of course we don't. So we just have to use the information we have and make our best projected amounts. So on revenues, the state and federal dollars are always a little bit of a question mark. The state for a lot of our revenues will release estimates here the end of July on what those will be for next year. But yet even after the state releases those numbers in July, they can change. And so the revenues is always our best estimate, and really kind of one of those things that is a question mark is the state and federal dollars. On the expenses side, employee wages sometimes is a little bit easier than others to estimate because we have a lot of employees that are covered by union contracts. But those union contracts also expire at different times. So for 2027, we do have a handful of contracts that are not settled. And so then we have to try to make assumptions. Same with health insurance. It sounds like about the beginning of August, we should be getting some data from our consultant on what our health insurance rates need to do next year. The great news since going self-insured is that really we see the activity every week and can have a good idea of how things are going, if they're going good or not so good. And so within this budget, you'll see we estimated a 5% health insurance increase. We've had 0% the last several years, which has been wonderful. And while our claims aren't trending as good as they have in the past, we have built up a good fund balance to support that and maybe doing a lower increase. And then paid family medical leave was something that came into the picture, obviously, for the 2026 budget. And that is something that, we've heard the claims for paid leave are lower than what we expected. But yet that paid family medical leave, that 0.88% of wages that we pay, there's been talk of that increasing, and it's been hard to determine what that's going to be actually for 2027. So within this budget, we left that paid family medical leave premium as the 0.88%. Whether the state determines to change that or not is still coming. But my hope, since all the rhetoric you hear is that the claims are coming in less than planned, would be that they would leave it alone. On the expense side, we have the Minnesota African American Family Preservation Child Welfare Disproportionality Act. And so that is something that we have talked about, or the act. We've talked about that since that was passed into legislation, and the impacts that's going to have on our Health and Human Services side in the child protection. And that's something that Becky has continually tried to fine tune of what that looks like. But that is an expense that, we're having to estimate what that actually looks like because we've never done it. Age of delinquency. So we've talked a little bit about that. So the age for a child to be charged with the crime has now changed from 10 to 13. And so you've got those kiddos in that time, that group that now are switching from the criminal side over to the child protection side. And that's something that, that was a change at the state. And so now that gets added onto that child protection side of what does that actually look like, and what, how many of those kiddos will you have come over? Obviously, you don't know what crimes are going to be committed in the next year. So it's again, an estimate. The long-term supported services cost shift. So that's something that the state proposed to balance their budget, was to literally just shift some costs from the state to the county. We have Patrick with Pine County that has been serving on the committee to hopefully have that be avoided. At this point, they've come up with a lot of great ideas that the state has adopted, but yet the state is still looking at shifting that cost to us. And then, of course, you've got the HR1 changes, which again, HR1, big, beautiful bill. So there are changes with the SNAP and the Medicaid, both administration, and then some cost shifts for error rates that have to be taken into account. Commissioner Waltham, do you have questions?
I could ask at the end. That's fine. I wrote it down.
Questions as I go, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, I won't interrupt
Okay.
now. I'd ask the chair, but I'll wait to the end. That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I already mentioned this, but in the 2026 budget, we had a little over $1.1 million of one-time money. And this breaks down what that one-time money looked like. So there's $536,000 of ARPA funds that are being spent in the general fund in the 2026 budget. And all the ARPA funds are done after 2026. They had to be spent by December 31st of 2026. There's $350,000 of planned spending of reserves in the general fund budget, and that was capturing savings from 2025, savings that we knew we had from 2025 and planning to spend them in 2026. And then in general, the budget was just adopted with a $161,000 deficit, with the thought that we've got to find that savings during 2026. And there have been some changes within the budget that have worked to chip away at that. And then in HHS, it was just adopted with about a $90,000 deficit or planned spending of reserves. So again, that's a hole that had to be dug out of when we started the 2027 budget. So some major revenue changes. So I always like to highlight, what's not so great, with our revenues coming in, what doesn't really matter, and then the things that are very helpful. So for, things that aren't so great with our revenues, in the proposed budget are, the SNAP admin. So again, that's one of those HR1 changes where just the federal government is paying us less for doing the work. So Becky's estimating that at $130,000 less of revenue next year versus this year. Targeted case management, so that's just a service that we provide that the revenues are trending lower. And also with some changes within HR1, some people are falling off Medicaid, and so then we can't provide those services anymore. And then boarding revenues, when we adopted the 2026 budget, we had assumed that there would be jail boarding revenues, and really it was not looking like those would be there. And so that in the 2027 budget is down by $100,000. And so those are just dollars that we likely still have expenses tied to, but we don't have those other funds to help pay for them anymore. On revenues that change that don't really matter. So for example, on our highway, state aids, and federal funds, you see that they went up $7.5 million. That is directly tied to projects. And so that's not anything, that's a direct result of our highway budget and the planned projects for next year. So it matters in that we're doing a lot of projects, but it's not like that's going to continue going forward, because going forward, it depends on what projects we're doing. And same with our sales tax changes. And so some years we spend sales tax on projects, some years we don't spend sales tax on projects. And so this year we're not spending as much money of sales tax money on projects. And so that's all that means. Things that are going up that are helpful. So the state did allocate a little bit of funds in the child protection area because of the act. And so Becky just has a quick estimate in there of those additional funds of what should be coming to us from the state. And I'll let her dig into all of those proposals when she presents her budget. Police contracts, Jeff is estimating that to increase some. I think that we're still working with the cities and the schools to sign those contracts for next year, but the contracts that were sent out, this is what the additional revenue would equal for the 2027 budget. And then annually, the state sends us police aid for running the sheriff's office. And so that's just estimated to go up about $50,000 next year. And that's something that the state really has just trended doing, is increasing it slightly each year. Major expense changes in 2027. So wages and benefits, that will be going up. It always seems to go up, not necessarily even because we're adding staff, just health insurance. I talked about that going up. And then of course you have cost of living increases or performance or step increases. To me, that number is a lot smaller than in the past. So wages and benefits countywide are increasing from 26 to 27 of $552,000. And that, as you'll see, as departments present their budget, some have made some staffing changes that has helped bring that down, and just helping with our health insurance rates not taking big jumps as well is helpful. The LTSS cost shift, so the long-term support services, I talked about that briefly, is that the state literally said, okay, county, you're still going to do this, but you're going to just pay some more of it. And so that is estimated about $150,000 more next year of expense that we don't get to do anything about. And a major expense that doesn't really matter is that highway construction. And you'll see that as a theme. Of course, it's a big project year. And so, yep, you see this huge increase in expenses in highway, but it's a planned thing. The funding goes along with it. So it's really a neutral situation. And then some good side things on the expense side is out-of-home placements have continued to trend downwards. So for 2027, the budget is about $144,000 less. And that includes the Health and Human Services side of the out-of-home placements and the juvenile center down in the cities as as both of those in that calculation. And then the contract medical services is the medical contract in the jail. So Rod has done a good job of trying to renegotiate that, and there's $175,000 savings in the 2027 budget for that renegotiation. So overall, when you put the whole budget together, and you look at the 2026 revenue versus the 2027 revenue, 2026, we were at $59.6 million for all of the revenue within the budget. For 2027, right now, it's proposed at about $65.2 million, which is an increase of $5.6 million. I break it down a little bit further in that chart in showing by the three major funds. So the three major funds that we usually talk about are the general fund, health and human services, and road and bridge, because those are the areas where we have the most employees and the most tax levy dollars that go to them. And so you can see in the general fund and health and human services, you see that both of them actually between 26 and 27 have a decrease in their revenues, which is not what we like to see, but unfortunately, like we've talked about, there are some changes coming down from the state, especially from at the health and human services side, that just decreases revenues. And then road and bridge, you see that big uptick in revenues, which we already talked about, is completely related to projects. And so you see this huge increase in road and bridge, but it is, you know, it's planned, and it's not anything that will continue year to year. I do like to highlight the top 10 non-levy general fund revenue. So again, this is just a look at the general fund and where those funds come from. And so this compares 2026 and 2027 and what those top revenues are. So we could talk down them, but we probably don't need to. So overall, you can see most of those top revenues are staying very stable, but yet they're not increasing necessarily. Which gets tough as expenses increase when your revenues don't increase. On the expense side, overall, you do see quite the uptick in expenses from 2026 to 2027, about $7.1 million between the 26 approved and the proposed 27. When you break that down further into those major funds, you'll see the general fund has a slight uptick of about $400,000. HHS has an uptick about $600,000, and road and bridge has a huge uptick, which again is related to those projects. Countywide, I wanted to highlight the top 10 non-debt expenses. And so this just shows 2026 to 2027. So this doesn't include any of our bond payments, and it is countywide. And so you can see those big ticket items of where our funds are going. And salaries and benefits is always going to be at the top of the list, as almost half of our budget is salaries and benefits of employees. And then it shows just the change in those between 26 and 27. I do like to highlight the debt, and every year that I talk about the debt, 2031 sounds closer and closer. And so, you know, our debt started at about $25.6 million, and it's been paid down now through the end of the year, just under $12 million. And so next year, you'll see that we make about $2.4 million of payments on the different bonds. But yet most of that now is going to principal because of those balances are getting lower and lower. And 2031 now is not that far off really from when we started. So when we pull everything together on the entire budget, the revenue and expenses, obviously they don't match. We do have a gap, and unfortunately the revenue is less than the expenses. There is no property tax levy baked into this or anything, so this is just a clear, our revenue is lower than our expenses by just over $2 million. And I break it down into those major funds so that you can kind of see where that difference becomes. And so on a future slide too, I break it down even further by the different areas. But general fund and both health and human services do have a deficit that needs to be addressed. I do like to show this slide. So it looks at every department that has staff. And it looks at where that deficit's coming from. And so your first column under new dollars is, okay, this is the deficit in that department. And how much of that deficit is related to salaries and benefits? Because unless we're cutting staff, there's not a lot that our employees can do about the salary or our department heads can do about the salary and benefit increases. Because the health insurance goes up, there are contracts for wages, and so there's not a lot that the employees can do without cutting staff, which I will be clear that there are departments that are coming forward with staff cuts. And so, for example, in the assessor's office, you do see a decrease in staffing because there is a proposed delay of a hire within that budget. And then there also is the piece where I'll use the assessor's office for the example of you see that they need another $36,000 to operate next year. Their staff costs are going down, but yet they still need more money. And the reason for that, like in the assessor's office, which Lori will get into when she presents your budget, is the fact that our contracts with those townships, our revenue in that department is going down. So even though our costs are going down, our revenue is also going down. And so there's little stories that you'll get to know throughout all of these things as to why there's those changes. So again, I already kind of gave you a peek at this, but this puts some hard numbers to it. So when we are looking at balancing the 2027 budget, I broke it down by fund where the tax levy dollars are and where there's a deficit. So the general fund currently sits with about a $1.4 million deficit. Health and Human Services, with all of the changes that Becky was dealt that she didn't have any choices over, she's only sitting at an $866,777 deficit. In the debt funds, our bond documents specify what our levy has to be. And so in the debt funds, we have to levy $9,723 more next year. The building fund, we're not looking to change that at all. $25,000 is going in there each year. The tech fund, we are proposing an increase of $25,000, and that is direct levy funds. As some of you have heard, or probably all of you have heard, a lot of technology costs are significantly increasing. Some years ago, we used to put $100,000 in the technology fund annually, and then in a rough budget year, we had continually decreased that. So by putting $25,000 back into this, we've climbed back. We used to have the tech fund at $100,000 every year. It was cut down to all the way down to $25,000. And now we've been trying to notch back up to that $100,000 level. And so by putting another $25,000 in that tech fund, that brings it back to that $100,000 level. This also gives Ryan some breathing room within his operating budget to be able to plan some of those bigger projects because it's in the tech fund and he can make plans for in a year or 2 years from now, this is what we're going to do with those funds. And then in the elections fund, we're just proposing a $5,000 increase in the levy. So as some of you remember, in 2018, we made a change in how we were budgeting the elections. So previously in even years, we'd have a really high budget and levy, and then in odd years, we'd have a low budget and levy. In 2018, we made that change and made it so that it's even. But yet the cost of having elections is going up. So in order to prevent from 2028 needing to shoot up significantly, if we did a $5,000 increase next year, it evens things out. I do always like to note the 2026 levy amount there, and we always like to talk in percentages. So a 1% levy increase is about $233,792 as we talk about things. I also like to highlight just what our levy is and what it does to our unrestricted general fund balance. So doing a 0% levy, that can work if you're not cutting expenses, but then that means you're using fund balance. And as you see on this chart back some years at the beginning of the chart, that had happened a lot. And so our general fund unrestricted balance was down as low as $801,000. And when it gets to those low levels, you question writing out your paychecks to your employees. You question paying the bills that week. So the board in 2012, which was sitting at a 6% fund balance, adopted a policy to have a target of an unrestricted fund balance of 20 to 35%, which they felt like was an attainable goal. The state auditor's office, that's below what the state auditor would suggest you be at. The state auditor thinks you should be at 35 to 50%, but that didn't seem attainable to the Pine County Board at that time. So there has been some decisions throughout the years to purposely budget to add to those fund balances. We haven't done that in recent years, but thankfully we have, for the most part, continued to add to the fund balance. And you can see the history of that fund balance out there. At the end of 2024, we were sitting about 27.2% of expenses in that fund balance. So we're sitting in a good place, but yet it could change really fast because you're just over kind of in that 20% range. So I do want to highlight a few other items that are baked into this budget that maybe you are not seeing clearly. There is stable funding for the partner organization, so Historical Society, Soil and Water, Ag Society, Initiative Foundation, and then in the library, I did budget for a 5% increase. I know that the library committee just met last week to start their talks on what that will be for 2027, but being as it's a bigger number, it felt like there needed to be something in there. Last year, they held it at 0%, but that is very difficult to do year after year. So I did increase the library contribution by 5%. And once we get that from the actual library, we'll throw that in there of what the actual number is. Something that we had done in the 2026 budget that is not done in this one is we assumed in our 2026 budget that we were going to have wage savings of at least our paid family medical leave premium. So when employees go on that paid family medical leave, they're not being paid by Pine County. They are getting paid by the state of Minnesota through that program. So for the 2026 budget, we had assumed that we would save at least that premium amount. We haven't gotten to get a lot of data to see if that's been true or not. And so at this point, we have not decreased the wages for that paid family medical leave premium. And so the 2027 budget for that paid family medical leave is just over $99,000. So that might end up to be a really easy savings of almost $100,000. But at this point, it didn't seem prudent to put that in yet. It budgets the jail staff at 100%. As you may recall, in previous years, we had assumed that there would be turnover in the jail and there would be vacancies in the jail. So we had been budgeting the jail staff at 95%. Rod and his crew have made some changes and are going to be proposing some changes to the jail staff staffing plan that really cuts the number of staff down, and thus we need to be 100% staffed to make it work. So this does budget the jail staff at 100% wages and benefits, but yet it's less staff overall in general. I already highlighted that where the proposed budget increases the technology fund by $25,000. This budget also does address most health and human services, federal and state changes. Becky has done a really good job for the last year of trying to fine tune what that actually looks like and what the dollars associated with it are. And then I want to note that there's minimal staffing changes. So I don't highlight staff that are being proposed to be cut in this. There are a few positions that are changing, and I'll let those departments highlight those when they present their budgets to you. But this is the changes or the increases in staff that are proposed within the budget. So it proposes to increase the assistant veteran service officer by 4 hours a week. So currently that person works 20 hours a week, and it would change them to 24 hours a week. That would make for 3 full days in the office rather than 2.5. As we've talked about, the economic development coordinator, which has been paid out of ARPA, through 2026, we can no longer pay for that out of ARPA. And so then if we're going to keep that position, we need to pay for it a different way. I do note that the cost on here is $39,173, and that is because we have some anticipated revenues that would offset the cost of that position. And so that is the net cost of what the levy dollars would be additional that would be needed to keep that position. The end of July, we do have a joint meeting with the economic EDA, HRA, and we'll dig into that some more. And then right before that meeting as well, I'll go over kind of our numbers of where we're sitting. And then the other position that I wanted to highlight that is being sort of added to this is the restorative practices coordinator. So currently we have a grant that's covering that position. That position is overseen by Reese. And that it's doing a lot of good work, but that grant ends the end of May next year. And so that 52,038 would keep that position on throughout the rest of 2027. And then I don't break it down, but it increases for the necessary health and human services staff to deal with the federal and state changes. Because to me, those aren't decisions that we get to make. They were made for us and we have to do it. So as you're thinking about this, obviously, what do we do? The ways to solve the problem are to look at detailed department level review of expenses and revenues. To me, the revenue side is just as important as the expense side. Are there ways that we can pay for things other than tax levy? And then added staff, so that 97,279. So that is these 1, 2, 3 positions that I list at the bottom there. So the additional hours for the Veteran Services, the Economic Development Coordinator, and then the restorative practices. We may need to think about cuts to existing programs. Is there a scope of service that we need to narrow? Because there are areas where we have discretion in what service we offer. And is that something we want to consider? And then, of course, I always have it on the end of the list, is what kind of levy increase are we looking at or not looking at? And so obviously it's really hard to answer any of those questions until you start to get into those department presentations of what can we do? But this hopefully just gives you an idea of where are we starting? All right, that is what I have. Questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Question. The earlier on, you were talking about a crime thing with 10-year-old and 13-year-old. What's that?
Yeah, so that's age of delinquency. And so that is a state change that puts the minimum age when a child can be charged with a crime. So it used to be 10, and now the state has moved that up to 13. So if a child commits a crime between now the ages of 10 and 13, now instead of being dealt with in the criminal justice system, they're dealt with in the child protection system. And we don't get to argue whether we think that was a good idea or not. That was a change that the state made.
Okay, so criminal children being charged with the crime is what you're.
Yep,
age
and the
change.
age that they can be. Are
Okay, child protection.
now have to address those kiddos.
And then you didn't touch on PILT. PILT is 911,000, and that's payment in lieu of tax paid to us for the approximate 39,000 acres of tax forfeited land.
That includes the tax forfeited land, but that also includes like the state park land and those types of things as well.
Oh, so it's greater than the 39,000 acres.
Correct.
So that's talking General Andrews Forest,
Yes.
Changacona State Forest, Banning, all that.
Right, Namaji, all of it. Yep.
So it's closer than to maybe
I wouldn't.
80,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't have the acres. I'd have to look it up.
Okay, and then the library wanted 5%, but from what I understand, the library still gets an extra $124,000 from us that is not state mandated.
So the library has not asked for anything. And so I was trying to just give us a best estimate of what they will be asking for. But maybe, I don't know what they're going to ask for. They just started their budget process last year. And yes, there is a state statute required payment that the county makes, and we are paying at a higher level than that because that minimum was set 20 plus years ago and not changed.
Okay, and last time I checked, there was 124,000 extra over the mandate. But yeah, you had here a 5% and then you're.
Right, and that was just my best estimate, to try to give us numbers to work with.
Okay, then $500,000 disappears from the county. How do we budget that?
Sure, are you referring to the electronic funds transfer issue that I made you aware of this morning?
Correct.
Right, and so that is in the middle, I mean, that just happened, and that is in the middle of many investigations, and so at this point, I don't know how to deal with that because we may get the money back. We don't know.
And our insurance might cover it. I mean, there's a million. So.
There's lots of scenarios. I mean, the bank has policies of where they followed, both our bank and then the receiving bank. And there's a lot of different scenarios that until we work through the investigations, we don't know.
Okay.
But I mean, I would like to think worst case scenario, this is why we have fund balance, unfortunately.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? And obviously, this is, like you said, the crystal ball. We're just starting, we're looking. I appreciate this overview. We used to not get this. So this is something that Kelly has brought forward and it's really nice to kind of set it. And then now we work through everything and what we come out. So.
Not as bad as I thought it would be.
Right. So as I noted in my budget, in my memo in the board, departments were given that status quo was maximum. And so that's one caveat is previous years departments would come in with a wish list. And so this number that you were given included some easy cut wish list items, where this year there's not a wish list for the most part. It is bare bones down to status quo. I highlighted those few staff changes that were requested.
Thanks, Kelly. A lot of work there.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. We'll look at, we'll move on to court administration. Got Amy back.
All right, I don't have the slide to put up. I don't know if you do.
Yeah,
Otherwise it's-
they all have the handout of your spreadsheet.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kelly. That was very informational. I haven't sat through that either. So my budget is also, I mean, one of the smaller ones because we don't have to do staff. So I am basically asking for right around what we asked for 26. Actually, it is 200 less. So the main expense for us is that number 6264, the court appointed specialists. Those are again, your CHIPS attorneys, attorneys for commitments and CHIPS, I say acronyms, but it's a child in need of protective services. So again, that might go up a little bit due to what Kelly touched on with the delinquency age, but that's again, those attorneys, if they need psychological exams, we need to do that. I did look, when I was looking at this at previous years, I did see like we went over 2024, 2025. That was as a result of an attorney this year submitting claims that went back to those years. The judges have since put in that if attorneys don't bill within 6 months, that we won't be paying them so that we can avoid you guys taking those hits like that. So that's why I felt pretty comfortable leaving a line item 6264, the court appointed specialist at 70,000. Our other expenses would be the $1,000 postage freight, the 6202. Again, I left that where it was. The telephones upstairs that the bailiffs use are the only ones that are left that go through you guys that aren't reimbursed, and that's at $200. So those were the expenditures. The revenue coming in, again, the line item 5210, the trial court phone postage, we get billed for that and then we reimburse that with you guys. So we put a minimum of 1,000, it could be more. Emergency protective care reimbursement, that again has to do with your children in need of protective services. We haven't seen any money come in for that. I'm not sure the reasoning behind that one. Fines and fees, we haven't collected as many through that. If we did collect, like you're speaking a little bit about the law library fees, there is when defendants are fined, there is a portion that does go to the law library to be reimbursed. So again, then my ask was for the 71,200. Do you guys have any questions?
Just keep doing a good job.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, like, with Kelly saying and with Becky's been through for her staff, we're lucky because again, the people we have here are amazing, so makes our job easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, so we do have a break here. We have, as you can see, U of M extension starting back at 1, so we'll just recess till 1 o'clock.